Hello and welcome to the Make Money with Mace podcast. I'm your host, Mace, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Week 3 slate for the NFL. Before we get right into that, just going to recap the best bets I handed out on Sunday and just the Monday ones. So in terms of Sunday, Atlanta and Green Bay hit the over, which was great. They cleared it by about 10 points too, which was really nice. Just two competently coached teams running their competent offenses. Nothing too crazy there. I believe we missed out on the under by a point in the Dallas Cowboys New York Jets game, which is what it is on that front. Not too concerned just because it was a point off. Thought process was right. Dallas scored a few too many points, but still not the worst loss in the world. Terrible loss was Seattle just beating Detroit. I guess Detroit's just always their get-right game, it seems like, for Seattle in recent times. So not sweating it too much because Detroit still played a really good game. Like, I'd start sweating it if I was handing out, like, blowouts. And my darling Tennessee Titans, as dogs of 3 or more points, continue to just show up and show out. Got that money line win. That was awesome. Love to see that. So, yeah, and then Monday we can talk Monday night a little bit. Obviously the Nick Chubb injury was terrible and is the reason why that bet lost. It was on pace, which, you know, I'm not the biggest loser in that. People who were riding were not the biggest loser. Obviously Nick Chubb's a phenomenal player, and you hope he's able to make a recovery and be a semblance of what he was. It's a horrible injury, and like I said, hope for a speedy recovery for him. And then in the other game, Saints-Panthers, under. It got a little hairy at the end there with the garbage time touchdown, but still got the under by 1.5, so we take it. So yeah, let's take a look at the games. And I'm going to be looking at overs, unders, favorites, and dogs, but just chronologically, going to take a look at the games, talk about them a little bit, what I think is going to happen, and on Sunday morning, I'll have my best bets in order for people. But tomorrow, easy preview. San Francisco 49ers are playing host to the New York Giants, who are going to be without Saquon Barkley. The Giants are 10.5-point favorites, and I'm going to be hammering that. I think the Giants are not a good football team. Among not just having their one-score game luck probably reversed this year, like those one-score games they beat the Commanders in, I think we'll see the Commanders win those this year because I think they're just a better football team. Daboll is a great coach, but that's about it in terms of the what the New York has going for them. Danny Dimes is exceptionally average. Obviously, he's a great runner, but not a great thrower. The weapons are mediocre, and we're only able to shine because they're facing a pretty poor team in terms of talent in the Cardinals, and the defense has no teeth. So San Francisco is arguably the best roster in the whole NFL. Purdy's been playing well enough within Shanahan's system, and the defense is balling, so not too much to worry about on that front for San Fran. And I'm going to take it to the first game I'm seeing on Sunday is Colts going to Baltimore. So in this game, because Minshew is going to be playing and not Anthony Richardson, I think Baltimore being 8.5-point favorites that's like the line I'm seeing for the best odds, but most places have them at 7.5. I think Caesars has them at 8, but like DraftKings and FanDuel have them at 7.5. I think 7.5 is about right. Indy isn't pathetic. They have some weapons. Steichen seems to know what he's doing a little bit. But their weapons aren't exactly great. It's like, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and that's about it. Anthony Richardson was mostly making things work against pretty poor team. Well, he didn't even really make things work against Jacksonville. You got to remember they only scored 13 points on offense. They had that, 14 points on offense. They had the fumble return touchdown for DeForest Buckner. But they look good against the Texans, which I hope he would look good against the Texans. I mean, C.J. Stroud looked good against the Colts with all the passing yards and everything. He's doing well. But it's just a big step up. And with Minshew, I love him. But I don't think the Colts roster can succeed really against Baltimore, because Baltimore's playing really good ball to start the year. And I expect that to continue, and I expect Lamar to continue to be really good. He was fantastic against Cincy. And again, the defense is a bit toothless for Indy. Like, their best players are talked about in my preview. They play in the middle of the field, and I don't think Shaq Leonard or Zaire Franklin are going to be great spies on Lamar. So I think that there's a chance Lamar runs wild. Zay Flowers runs wild against the mediocre corners, and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill have really big days. You hope the offensive line is somewhat healthy for Baltimore too, so they can really impose their will, but can't really count on health and Baltimore in the same sentence. So that's what I'm thinking there. The next game I see, which I'm just telling you, I'm gonna take it again. Vegas is setting the Tennessee Titans as 3.5-point road dogs to Cleveland. Cleveland without Nick Chubb is really bad. They just are. Tennessee's defense travels. They have a great run defense. Tannehill, I don't think will play as bad as he did in week 1, even with how the Browns' defense does look good, to be completely fair to them. But Deshaun Watson's horrible. I think Tannehill's probably better than them at this point. Derrick Henry will be able to bust something probably. I think Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins have some big plays in them. But ultimately, I think Vrabel is awesome as a dog, proven, tried and true. I don't love this as much as I love the Chargers one, so I don't know if I'll be taking a money line, but I'm definitely looking at it already as my underdog for sure. Probably gonna just take it, Not gonna stop taking singles up the middle for myself. Another fun game. Atlanta going to Detroit. Both dome teams, so I think both offenses are going to be humming. Detroit's a 4-point favorite, and while I like both teams quite a bit, Atlanta is looking to be healthier, which matters. Detroit's going to be missing David Montgomery in all likelihood. I think it is confirmed they're out this week, Montgomery. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe, was on the injury report with a calf. And if he's not 100%, Detroit's weapon situation looks a lot worse. And even still, they have some dudes who can make plays. Josh Reynolds is good. Marvin Jones Jr. is good. You wish you had Jameson Williams, but he keeps gambling. Craig Reynolds is all right. The run game will be good because the offensive line's awesome. And Craig Reynolds, Jahmyr Gibbs, and whomever else they throw out back there is going to be able to produce to some capacity. And I think that's what's going to happen for Detroit. But Atlanta is really good. Offensive line's fantastic. The receivers are solid. Ritter is looking like he might be something. Like, he's able to make plays when it counts. He's not turning the ball over very often. And I think that it's like he'll travel. Like, the way Atlanta plays travels, they want to grind you to dust with their run defense, with their run offense. The rushing attack's awesome. Bijan's awesome. Tyler Adriel's awesome. Offensive line's awesome. So I think that Atlanta's just going to do what they do. And as a 4-point dog, they're pretty enticing, but Detroit is also really solid. Like, these are two well-coached teams with lots of talent on both sides of the ball. Detroit less so on defense. I think Atlanta's a slightly better overall football team, but I don't think the public's going to catch on to that for a little while longer. But DraftKings has them at 3-point dogs at -102. So, all right. It's 3.5 elsewhere, but if you're going to bet on any close-ish thing like that, I'd take Atlanta, potentially Atlanta money line. I think just they travel well. They should be able to travel well. I do think it is their first road game, so that's always a big test. But Detroit, fortunately for them, they can't afford to lose some games in the NFC North. But it could be a bounce back spot. It's a pretty interesting game. It's definitely a game I want to watch for sure. I think both teams are going to be good and fun, so going to be taking a look at that one. Probably have it as my second game up, and hopefully there's lots of red zone action. New Orleans and Green Bay. So for the case in Green Bay, Jordan Love's facing his first legitimate, really big test defensively. While the Falcons have playmakers on defense, they're not exactly the best unit ever. The Bears are a total disaster as an organization. So it's not really fair to hold them in any regard when it comes to defensive prowess at this point, or just prowess organizationally. New Orleans, for whatever it's worth, they throw out a competent, well-coached, mean defense year over year over year. And Derek Carr is probably getting a little more comfortable with the offense. I don't know how good the offense can be because Carr hasn't looked particularly good through 2 games. Tennessee and Carolina do have really good defenses, but I don't really know how good he is at this point in his career, and I don't really know how good like Michael Thomas is. Chris Olave is the truth. That dude's awesome. But I don't really know how good the rest of their weapons are. And with that being the case, I think Green Bay's defense will do well, as well as New Orleans will. And the over-under right now is set at 42.5. And the way New Orleans likes to play, they sort of like I said, they want to grind you to dust defensively. Jordan Love's probably not going to face a defense like this for a little while longer. But as of right now, it's kind of an under game, I think. I don't really see... Christian Watson and Aaron Jones could play and could do well. I don't see New Orleans scoring many points because that's not really their MO. So that's the case with that game. I'm sort of staying away from it, I think. It's in the Vegas zone. I think Green Bay is a 2-point favorite at home. It is away from the Dome, so that does matter. But 2-point favorite, kind of tenuous. I'd stay away from this game just in general. Houston going to Jacksonville. Houston has a good record against Jacksonville. It's something in like the divisional rivalries, right? Where it's like the Dolphins always beat the Patriots. Patriots always beat the Jets. That sort of thing. I do think that Jacksonville is really good. They're 9.5-point favorites on DraftKings, 8.5 on FanDuel. I think that's correct, especially since the health of the Texans' offensive line is dire. It's prevented Dameon Pierce from really getting going. It's made C.J. Stroud have to throw a lot. And to C.J. Stroud's credit, he's done what he can. He looks like he could be a real solid NFL quarterback for a little while. So I'm not really too concerned with Houston. And they have a long-term project ahead of them. So in terms of a favorite and a big favorite, Jacksonville's not the worst team to take, covering 9.5. I'd stay away from the money line. I don't fall into the trap of Houston and a big spread. I think they're a little feisty. No, I'm not saying, don't fall into the trap of them covering a big spread just because the roster isn't there yet. And Jacksonville's got a good roster. But the one thing to be worried about is, Will Anderson just wrecking the backup right tackle on Jacksonville, whose name's escaping me right now, because that's who Kansas City abused with George Karlaftis and Chris Jones, just abusing the backup right tackle. So I think in that case, under might be in play. Under might be. What's the over under? 44. Under's definitely in play because there's a chance Will Anderson just ruins the day of Trevor Lawrence. Has his first big breakout game. Under's definitely in play, but just as easily as I say that, Jacksonville could just kill him. So who knows? It's a weird divisional game. I don't know if I'm betting it, but I will tell you a game I am betting. Denver is going to Miami. They're 6.5-point underdogs. Miami's a 6.5-point favorite, I should say. I love this so much. Denver's defense has regressed pretty badly to the mean. 2 home losses to start the season where the offenses just got to do whatever they wanted. It looks more impressive than it actually was when they held the Raiders to 17 points, but I think the Raiders had 7 possessions and the Denver had the 6th most possessions, and Denver fans are huffing that copium with we have the most points per possession, and they're not a good team. They couldn't put away the Commanders with a huge lead. They couldn't score against the Raiders effectively, and they couldn't keep the ball out of Jimmy G's hands. They let long drives sustain. They're not a cohesive football team, and it feels almost like an audition for next season. And it's probably a Drake May sort of a thing. It could be Drake May. Shador's probably staying a year, as was said, I believe, by Dion himself. But Caleb Williams, Drake May in all likelihood, because I don't think Denver's as, number 1 pick bad. But they're close. They just lack roster talent, and Miami's a Ferrari. They've got so much roster talent. They've got awesome coaches, awesome QB, awesome weapons. Even without Jalen Waddle, I think they'll be able to do whatever they want against Denver. So that's the case there. And I think my favorite game of the week, like this is my actual favorite game of the week. Chargers at Minnesota. Just take the over. Take the over. Minnesota's a 1-point dog at home. Out the over under is 54. So the thing with the Chargers is I saw this. Oh my god, I need to pull this up. Brett Coleman. Watch him. He's on the NFL Film Room. He's got his own channel, Bootleg Football, all that stuff. I love Brett Coleman. He does X's and O's, awesome content. It's not really gambling focused. He does do stuff with Underdog Sports. They're the presenting sponsor. But he has lots of good information. And he is able to present it in a digestible way. So he... Let me see. Because he's the one who mentioned CJ Stroud, right? Like, just going back to him, where CJ Stroud on third down has taken 42 dropbacks. He's 30 of 37 with 2 drops. So he's got 338 yards, a touchdown, taken 3 sacks, 9.1 yards per attempt, average at the target 8.5 yards, 9 point. Like, he's really solid. Like, that's where I found the CJ Stroud information. He looks really, really good. And, oh my god, let me find it. It's the Chargers. It's such a funny stat. Oh my god, I can't find it. But basically, the Chargers defense is so bad. They are ranked 32nd in the NFL. In a stat, I believe it was EPA per play. So they rank 32nd in EPA per play. And here we go. Oh, found it. Okay, so can't really find it. But is basically the Titans are so bad at EPA per play. They rank 32nd. The difference between the 32nd team, which they are, and 31st team is the same as the difference between the 31st team and the 22nd team. So they're horrific. They're a horrific defense. And I think Staley's done. I think, this was from Steve Palazzolo at Pro Football Focus a couple days ago. Opposing quarterbacks are averaging 10.3 yards per attempt against the Chargers defense this season. So, that's basically every pass is going for a first down against the Chargers. It's bleak. It's really, really, really bleak. So, yeah, they're so bad. I'd take the over because the Vikings defense is not great, but they've got pieces. And Brian Flores is good. I love Ivan Pace Jr. I think Danielle Hunter's really fun too. But outside of those two players, they don't really have much on the defensive side of the ball. Justin Jefferson might go for over 200 yards. He really might. He's fantastic. I know the over and under is 54 and 53.5, but considering that I think both games have hit that so far, I want to say, let me take a look. Let me verify that. Chargers games this season. Because I know week 1 for sure did. That was 37-34. They lost to the Dolphins. And then was it 30-27 that they beat the Titans? 27-24. So they didn't quite hit that number. And Tennessee's not exactly a great offense. Great defense, but 27's a lot for them. That's overtime. So yeah. I'd take the over in this. I'd take the Vikings in this too if you're feeling it. They're both 0-2. They both need it. But Minnesota, I think, is just more stable between Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores and just the overall team composure and structure. The Chargers are kind of a mess. So, yeah, not the biggest fan of what the Chargers operation is because they're the on-paper Super Bowl every year. On paper, they're so good. Wow, so amazing. And every year, it's just mediocrity. It's crazy. It's been that way my whole life, dating back to even early Drew Brees years. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. So next game I'm very much personally invested in. The New England Patriots are going to the New York Football Jets. New England Patriots obviously have demolished Zach Wilson his entire career. But I have no confidence in the Patriots offensive line to do anything to hamper the Jets' front four. Cole Strange I don't think he's an NFL guard. Not in a system that requires, maybe he could be a guard in a Shanahan system. Like maybe he goes to the 49ers or Miami, the Rams, like these teams that like run this tree. The outside zone run scheme tree, like West Coast outside zone. He goes to one of them and he does something as part of that scheme, but he has no functional ability in an Earhart Perkins type of offense, and I don't like that type of player against Quinnen Williams. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So unless David Andrews is literally double teaming Quinnen Williams with Cole Strange every single play, or they just put in City Sow or Antonio Mafi on the left side, to basically make sure that there's someone who's powerful and has a size, who doesn't really have the size mismatch against Williams the way Cole Strange does. So I really think that that's the case in that game. It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be so low scoring. The Patriots don't have any weapons besides Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, and because they're rookies, Bill Belichick will not play them. Awesome, love it. So the Patriots are willingly playing with one hand tied behind their backs because of just everything that's gone on with them since Brady left, and the Jets are playing with both hands tied behind their back on offense, anyways, because Zach Wilson is maybe the worst quarterback since Jamarcus Russell. He's probably the worst since Jamarcus Russell. He might be worse than Jamarcus Russell, in all seriousness. So that's at least going for the Patriots. Defensively, obviously both teams are fantastic. The Jets do have a weakness, though, and it's that they run that Seattle style, old school Seattle cover 3, where they try to eliminate, and they do 2 deep shells, but basically they put the corners in charge of their side of the field. And like with Seattle, that if you don't have 2 great corners, or at least like in Seattle's case, they had Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, and Earl Thomas. In the case of the Jets, DJ Reed's really good, but I don't know if he's like an all-pro the way those guys are. Jermaine Whitehead is really good too, but again, not quite like that all-pro level. Sauce is obviously awesome, and to disparage him or try to do anything like that is really goofy. So Sauce is awesome. The only hope the Patriots have is to try to get Sauce away from the playmaking Demario Douglas, or try to take advantage of the fact, like, don't throw to his side of the field, basically. Eliminate him from the game and pick on everybody else, and do it with the quick game and just methodically chunk your way down the field. Like, try to get something going in the running game, run away from Quinnen Williams, that sort of thing. You'll be able to do something on offense, and Mac Jones has looked so much better with a competent OC, but I just don't know if the offensive line is going to be able to really hold up. But the good news is that Patriots defense is as advertised. Obviously, going up against 2 of the better teams in the NFL, they had some issues on defense, but I don't feel that bad when the game plans work to an extent where it's like Philly really struggled moving the ball when they weren't gifted short fields by tip drill interception and a bad fumble. And Miami had to, and give Tua credit, give Mike McDaniel credit, they were daring him to throw the ball, daring him to throw deep, being like, we know you love to do that, so do it. And he pivoted, he ran the ball, he went away from Hill and Waddle. Tua was smart enough to really, like, I'll throw River Craycraft and Durham Smythe and Braxton Berrios all day. So, got to give them credit for that. And now the Patriots are facing an offense that is demonstrably worse than their defense across the board, offensive line. Garrett Wilson's awesome, but I don't think he's so awesome that he can overcome like Christian Gonzalez and company. And Breece Hall is a little scary, but again, the offensive line for the Jets is really bad, and I think that Jawan Bentley is going to have a better game against a back like Breece instead of like the West Coast Raheem Mostert, all the motion, like all that stuff. Miami's awesome. Like, I could talk about them all day and how aesthetically pleasing their football is. but, is what it is when it comes to Patriots Jets. I've just spent a lot of time breaking this game down because I care a lot about it, and my mental well-being for the next week probably depends on it. But overall, I do think the Patriots end up winning this game. The over-under, I'd almost stay away. 36.5 is too low for the modern NFL. There's, like, I say 17 to 10's likelihood. Obviously, last game was like 10 to 3, stupidity. And both these, in like the games went under. I think that there's a chance that we see a little bit more action, just because the Patriots offense is much more competent than it was last year. Can't say the same for the Jets. And the Patriots are road favorites at 3 at DraftKings, 2.5 at FanDuel. So if you're willing to take it and you expect the Patriots to continue their dominance, go for it. I have to emote. Just staying away from this is the best for my mental well-being, to not have the emotional damage along with the financial if they don't cover. so yeah, I'm staying away for sure on this one. And I'm going to talk about the next game, Buffalo Bills visiting the Washington Commanders. Washington is a lot of fun. They've got a really solid team, and Sam Howell might be really solid. Obviously, it's his first year starting, so I'm expecting hiccups. Buffalo, when they're able to outmatch teams, it really shows. But when they're facing like even-ish talent on either side of the ball, they tend to fold. The thing with Washington is that they're very talented on the defensive front. Awesome front four. Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, and a healthy Chase Young is a very good front four. The secondary solid too. I think Jeremy Curl's a good player. Brandon Forbes is held up in coverage. So I think that they've got stuff there. And they're playing at home, and defenses play worse in Denver typically, so I'm not feeling like that's too big of a deal. So their front four needs to wreck the game for them to keep this close, and I think they can. Buffalo, when they face really good pass rushes, they don't really know what to do because their play calling is abysmal, typically. Ken Dorsey is a really bad offensive coordinator, and how he's maddening because he'll dial stuff up and like, we're going to go heat them up. And when they feel like they're in a hole or need a big play, that's all they ever call. But they won't really go out of their way to methodically go down the field the way that they can and how they did against the Raiders, where it's just like, take the 5-yard chunk, take the 7-yard chunk over and over again. And they ran the ball really well against the Raiders. Obviously, I don't think they'll be able to run the ball as well against Washington. But the receivers should have a bit of a better matchup against Washington than they did the Jets. So, I think Washington can keep this close just because I think Scary Terry's out there. He's awesome. Jahan Dotson's great. Curtis Samuel's great. Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are a great backfield duo. And like I said, Sam Howell is really solid. The one big concern with this team is absolutely the running game. The offensive line. Offensive line's not good. Not good in pass pro. They can run block fairly well, but they are not a good pass protection unit. And man, oh man, it might get a little hairy because Buffalo is able to blitz fairly well. They're able to bring creative pressures, and that's probably the difference in the game. So if Washington's able to keep it close, it's because their defense really plays well. But this game has a chance for Buffalo to sort of run away with it as they try to take hold of the division and keep pace with Miami. So that's really what I'm thinking. I think Buffalo ends up winning this game. I don't know if they cover, but I think they for sure win this game. Go to the 4 o'clocks now. Carolina going to Seattle, and Seattle's a 6-point favorite, and I think that's correct. I do think that Carolina will be able to play better offensively because Seattle's pretty weak defensively. However, I do not think the Seattle Seahawks will be stopped. Maybe they will. I think this game... the issue is I really like a lot of Carolina's players on defense. I know Shaq Thompson got hurt and is going to be out for the year, and he's really solid. I think a sneaky line in this game is under 42. It might be a good under game. 42 is a lot. Obviously, Seattle played very well in the Dome, but week 1 when they faced a stout defense, they really were pretty poor. I think that Carolina's defense is really good and can create more pressure than Detroit can off the edge, pass rushing, all that stuff up the middle, and take advantage of the bad tackles that they've got going on. So in that case, I might stay away, but I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than what people think between Carolina and Seattle. I don't know if Seattle covers, but Seattle should win on paper, but I wouldn't be shocked if Carolina gets the upset win. So that's what I'm thinking there. Oh, boy. Dallas is a 12.5-point favorite or 12-point favorite against Arizona. Just take it. Take it and run. That might be my favorite. Might be my favorite. It might be my favorite. I think it will be my favorite. Maybe this game will be my favorite. Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Chicago Bears. Good Lord. Chicago's not going to score. If you haven't, go watch JT O'Sullivan, the quarterback school. It's his YouTube channel. He was a former player in the NFL. Does high school coaching as well as just like in general film guru sort of stuff. I really think that this game is going to be ugly. I think Steve Spagnuolo, like for the talent on the Chiefs defense is lesser than the sum of its parts, but Chris Jones is back and he's a massive difference in the middle there. And Steve Spagnuolo is a great defensive coordinator, one of the best of our time. And like if Fields can't do anything against lesser defenses, like with Green Bay, who plays a very vanilla defense, Tampa Bay, whose defense is old and slow, the Chicago Bears can't function against those teams, man, they're not going to function against a Spags defense that just got its most important player back. So that's what I'm thinking for that 4 o'clock game. And then the Sunday night game for your fathers, for your grandfathers, the grandparents, mothers too. Everyone loves football. The Las Vegas Raiders are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we got ourselves a good old-fashioned mid-off. But in this good old-fashioned mid-off, the one person calling the offensive plays is Josh McDaniels, and say what you will about him as a head coach, the man can call a defense, and their offensive line's pretty solid. They've got good weapons. We know the deal with the Raiders. They're pretty mediocre, but they are all right. They're not the worst team I've ever seen, and I think they're pretty good overall. Jimmy G staying upright, playing well in a familiar system. It's pretty good. And even if things do go sour and TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith does some damage, Aiden O'Connell's there, Brian Hoyer's there. So I don't think the Raiders will fall off too much if Jimmy G does get hurt, potentially. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, they did not run a play. They did not run a play inside the Browns' 30-yard line at any point during the game, and they won 26-22. They got a horseshoe. They got a horseshoe glued to their body. Man. I think best case scenario for Pittsburgh is to cover the 2.5. I kind of love Vegas in this game. They get a lot of flack just because it's Vegas and it's McDaniels and they've got bad history and like, oh, Derek Carr's gone. Derek Carr's not that good. Derek Carr and Jimmy G are very comparable quarterbacks. The difference is I think the talent is met with better decision makers, especially on offense. I don't know what Matt Canada is going to do schematically to slow down Max Crosby, other than just get the ball out quickly and like go 5 out and Kenny Pickett throw a slant, that sort of thing, or run ineffectually with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. So Mad Max could have a big game. What's his name? Oh my God, why am I forgetting his name? He was the 7th overall pick, Raiders rookie defensive end. Oh, he's awesome. What's his name? Texas Tech. I can picture him. It's not Brian Brees. Tyree Wilson. Brian Brees plays for the Bengals. Tyree Wilson is really, really pretty good. And he's been good. He's had an impact, and he's why the Raiders have been competitive in games, especially the first game. But going to Buffalo is hard. I'm not going to hold that against them, just because, again, the talent difference overall. But Pittsburgh and Vegas are on the same level in terms of talent across the board, I think. Obviously, defensively, Pittsburgh's probably got a little more, but the Raiders have more talent on offense. So overall, I think it's going to be a pretty... I don't know. I'm going to sleep on this, but I do kind of like the Raiders. I think the Raiders are just a better coach team. I shouldn't say that. Tomlin's a very good coach, and he'll have them ready to play. But what I mean is McDaniels is going to be able to utilize the talent he has offensively way more than Matt Canada will offensively. And I think that will end up being the difference in the game, because I think McDaniels will be able to scheme stuff open for Devontae Adams, or if Jacoby Myers is back, Josh Jacobs will probably be able to run a little bit. Like I think the Raiders will have something for the Steelers, and it won't just be like, Steelers running away with it. It could be a favorite. 2.5 basically makes it a pick 'em. So take a look at the money line on that. If it's even, it's not the worst thing ever. So yeah, those are all the Sunday games. Quick little look ahead to Monday. Obviously, no decisions will be made. Philly going to Tampa. Tampa's been really feisty, but it's against the winning in Minnesota is pretty impressive, and Baker's playing well, which you can't really take that away. You can sort of hedge the Bears' victories, so that's the case there. Philly, they let up. The Philly has a big weakness in their secondary. Obviously, it's really thin, and they lost Avonte Maddox for the year. I believe it's basically just Darius Slay back there at this point. So the secondary is really thin, and the pass defense really isn't there if Jalen Carter and the rest of the front don't get home. Josh Sweat's been awesome this year as well. So the Buccaneers' offensive line is really pretty all right. And I think I was wrong about them, just in the sense that I didn't take the Buccaneers' value in having all of their veterans very seriously. I thought they'd be more like gimpy and checked out potentially, with Brady not there. But Chris Godwin's balled out. Mike Evans has balled out. The defense has played well enough, I should say. I think the Vikings moved the ball on them pretty effectively. And like I said, playing against the Bears is like playing on easy mode. So I think that this game has potential to be close. But there's a chance Philly... And obviously Tampa's hard to run on too, with Vita Vea just in the middle and Levante David still being really good. The one thing that I'd be worried about is Philly just sort of wearing them down, and how they're able to be very multiple with how they attack you. Like, it could be the run game. It could be Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. And I think that will impact Philly more. And obviously they're a road favorite, and a 4.5 is hard to cover on the road. But Philly's really pretty good. It's hard to pick against them. Obviously, they covered once, got backdoor covered on by Minnesota, but they handled their business in that game and didn't really lose control of that game, because the offense was able to play well. And I think if the offense is able to go, it will cover up the secondary, especially if they're able to build a lead and the pass rush can tee off. So that's what Philly needs to look out for. They're coming off extended rest. I think that they'll look pretty good. So I think it's a little too early to really decide on what I'm betting, but I'm leaning Philly, or maybe even a Philly prop that game. The next game is the Rams and Cincy. It's Cincy at home. They're 2.5-point favorites right now. They need this game in the worst way, and I think they'll get it. I think the Rams have proven to be feisty and really pretty solid. And I thought they would be pretty solid. That's why I took their over on the season. I thought 6.5 was way too low. Matthew Stafford's really good. Puka Nacua is a revelation. And I think people just forgot that Sean McVay is a really good head coach, and something he did that Brett Coleman brought up on his podcast with his co-host EJ Snyder is called Bootleg Football. What he brought up that I really, really like is that they've changed their running system. They're not full outside zone, West Coast zone blocking all the time. They drafted Steve Avila, who's a guard of TCU, and he's a great like power running game. Earhart Perkins, just like maul you, kick, pull out, run duo, run power, that sort of lineman. And people thought it was a weird pick at the time because he doesn't really fit the scheme that they like. But it turns out he's just running more power. He's changing up the running game. He's doing things to elevate the team and not be stale. And I think that's the mark of a good coach, which he clearly is. Stafford's playing very well. Puka Nakua's kind of awesome. Tyler Higbee's good. And Tyrek Williams, the running back, is also really good. So, like, they're just a decent team that has a talent gap right now. And as long as Aaron Donald's there on defense, you can count on a play to be made. So that's how I feel about the Rams. However, Cincy should be much better. Joe Burrow has played more football recently, and I think in the second half of that Ravens game, he sort of came alive and is playing like the Joe Burrow we should be expecting. So I think that's the case there. I think Cincy ends up winning because they need it more, and they're an overall better team across the board, but I do think the Rams can keep it close. However, if I think Cincy's going to win and they're at -2.5, I might as well just take the money line. That's my thoughts on anything under 3. So that's what I'm thinking on that game, and that is my week 3 preview. Hope y'all enjoy it. I'll have a best bet for the Giants and Niners game out today, and be on the lookout Sunday for the 4 bets. And then college, you know what? I'll talk a little college treat for the people who make it through. So it's going to be really hard not to take Penn State, I'll tell you that for sure, because Penn State is playing host to Iowa, and Iowa is really pretty bad. They're not the best team out there. Where is Penn State? You got Control F. And for anyone who's wondering where I get my lines from and what site I use covers.com. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but I use covers.com because they have pretty comprehensive and they show where the lines are. Yeah, Penn State's a 2-touchdown favorite, or a little bit more than. They're -14.5. It's a night game too, whiteout game probably. 14.5, currently -108. Obviously gonna wait to see what the line settles at on Friday before I place my bet, and obviously I'll have the bet out Saturday morning. But it's hard not to take Penn State considering how good they are at covering games in September and how inept Iowa's offense just is historically and how good Penn State is as a unit. So I think Penn State probably ends up covering that game, and I'll have the blog out on Saturday morning for everybody to take a look at. But yeah, that is the Make Money with Mace podcast. It was a NFL Week 3 preview, a little bit of a review of Week 2, and I think this is how I'm going to podcast probably for the NFL. Have it out on Thursday, pretty comprehensive look, and just a quick little review of the bets. So that's the case there. And I will say, be on the lookout for the MLB playoffs chase for the World Series. Be on the lookout for that preview series. Might have a special guest for it. Don't know yet, but going to be previewing all those games, all those potential series. Obviously, stuff is not settled, especially in the American League. So, going to have lots to say once we figure out what the matchups look like. And I'll probably hand out who I think is going to win it all, and it's probably the Braves. So, they've been killing everybody. But yeah, that's what I've got today for the pod. Hope you enjoyed listening. Peace.